we use AI to help OBGYNs better detect fetal abnormalities. So the core problem that we're solving is that half of pregnant patients with a fetal malformation are misdiagnosed.
Is there a roadmap to having these types of solutions, maybe in a different format or structure where places in developing nations are able to take advantage of?
Just to even go through that process, I mean, to be top 200 is like a major accomplishment out of 3,000. What does that mean? He was producing 15 patents per year?
Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to the Caravan Podcast.
Wa alaikum assalam. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. Well, we're here in New York City. Joining us today is Robhy Bistami.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Close enough.
Or what do people usually call you as well?
So the official pronunciation is the Robhy Bistami.
Okay, we'll just voice cap that.
Yeah, it'll just have the voice over.
This is my lips are moving and then
Robhy.
Yeah.
Oh, dang it. That's okay.
Close.
It's okay.
But
it's like I'm going to Quran class again.
A lot. Yeah. Come out with a ruler.
we need to give you one probably.
But
on that note, we probably need to give Rama's one for like the mistakes we made.
No, so people call me Robhy Bistami.
Yeah.
I mean, that's in like work, and anyone that can't say that pretty much says Robby, but you guys can keep going for it.
Okay, we'll keep trying, man. That's what entrepreneurship's about, right? But you're the founder of Biotics AI, and you recently moved to New York. So are you based out of here fully now, or?
Yeah. We got an office space in Flatiron. I'm still learning the names of the neighborhoods.
Yeah.
We got a small office space for free, essentially sponsored by this program that we applied and got that space from. And then we're working with a few health systems in the area now. So now that we're here, we're doing some work. But Bay Area is still the main hub. We've still got a couple of co-founders there. So we're slowly making the move to New York, so we're kind of in that middle transition phase.
Interesting. Okay, so could you run us what is Biotics AI?
Yeah. So we use AI to help OBGYNs better detect fetal abnormalities. So the core problem that we're solving is that half of pregnant patients with a fetal malformation are misdiagnosed, and they're mainly misdiagnosed due to errors made by ultrasound operators. So what we've built is a software backed by AI models that can plug into any ultrasound machine, and it will help detect these fetal abnormalities and provide accurate diagnostics and mitigate these downstream issues that impact maternal mortality and morbidity and so forth. So
that's incredible. So before we jump into that and how you came, to that idea and building it, let's take a step back. What's your background? Like, where did you grow up? How old are you now?
Yeah, I'm 32. I turned 33 tomorrow.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah. Happy early birthday.
Thank you. Yeah. So 32 and 0.99. I was born and raised in San Francisco.
Oh, wow.
So grew up in the Bay Area, really around like the Silicon Valley tech boom. So was kind of a 90s San Francisco kid, early 2000s San Francisco kid. Grew up, my family, so my dad was an engineer, my mom was a physician, so she actually was an OBGYN.
Oh, okay.
Before moving into the public health space and working but still focused on maternal care. So grew up kind of around that world, but I would get, essentially when I was a kid, I'd get dropped off at my neighbor's house he'd babysit me. He was a software engineer. My whole street had a bunch of software engineers.
I just assume everybody who grew up in SF lives in like the Full House painted ladies home. So that's what I'm imagining your home like in your entire childhood.
I'm trying to remember the theme song for Full House. Yeah, no,
we'll play it in the background.
It wasn't like that. It wasn't like that exactly, but it was cool. San Francisco was a great place to be a kid for sure. And yeah, so we in the street that I lived on. I mean, there was more and more engineers kind of moving in, during those early years. And so when I was a little kid, I'd get dropped off to my next door neighbor. His name was Duncan. He was a software engineer who was working at Oracle at the time. And then he was like, when I was like 8, he was like, "Let me teach this kid how to code. It might be fun. He might be into it." And yeah, he taught me like basic, like first like HTML and CSS, and I was like, "Oh my god, this is so much fun." And then I just kept building and building stuff, and then learned JavaScript from that. And then at 9, I built At 9, I built like my first little like website that just had like some basic stuff. 12, I launched my first gaming app.
Man, shout out to Duncan.
Yeah, shout out to Duncan. Yeah. And then 13, I built like a music video website.
What?
Yeah, cool. built another another app just dedicated to Muhammad Ali because I was such a big Muhammad Ali fan. So I was just building things that I was really interested in, right? And it was just like whatever I found like intriguing or something that was fun. I was like, well, let me take this concept and let me just like put this into. So I was into gaming, so I built a gaming app, right? I was into Muhammad Ali, so I was like, people need to learn more about this guy. So I built a little educational website for him. And that really continued throughout my teens and then all the way through school for computer science and studied computer vision and so forth. But yeah, that was, and as a kid, we ended up moving from San Francisco to Berkeley. My mom ended up working at Berkeley as a Berkeley researcher, focused on improving maternal care outcomes. And actually their main focus was improving maternal care outcomes in Yemen. So my mom is half Yemeni.
Oh, wow.
So she actually, she kind of proposed this idea, and then we would end up going back and forth to Yemen. So I'll kind of pause there, but that was the childhood, was kind of growing up around my mom's work, but also I was just like heavily obsessed with technology and coding.
That's incredible. I mean, just in terms of like, that's what you get with SF, right? You just like your next door neighbor Duncan. No, that's it's awesome, right? Like you're getting so much exposure to like learning how to build something, and just being able to kind of experiment with different things that also kind of cross correlate with like some interest areas that you have as well. So you're very early on, you're already experiencing some of these different things, right? And building up your tool set of skills. What was kind of that transition like from like the early age to like really that time when it's time to decide, hey, what career path do I want to go down? How was that decision? What was that process like? Or was it kind of clear cut? Like it sounds, I'm assuming you're computer science or something along those lines.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Well, I mean, as a kid, you're kind of still like exploring different avenues, different things that kind of pique your interest. Like I was into history for a little bit, political science for a little bit, and I was taking these courses in college. And then also, so when we were 14, we ended up moving to Abu Dhabi. So we moved to the Middle East actually for 4 years. We left San Francisco, left the Bay Area, moved to Abu Dhabi. And then while I was there, got kind of like a new experience, meeting a lot of people from different backgrounds and so forth.
This was like 2009.
This was we moved on New Year's Eve of 2006. So we left 2006, landed there 2007.
A long flight, no. No, but how was that experience? Because that's a big move, right? One, you're going from like something that you know growing up as a kid, and then you go into like a completely different environment. That sounds like an experience, but it also sounds like whatever you felt like you knew. You have to completely change a circle of your friends, new environment. What was that really like, and how did that help you in your journey?
Totally, yeah. It definitely was a little bit like, okay, you're just getting picked up from one place and just being thrown in to this other place. But I mean, I kind of acclimated pretty quickly. I think I got lucky on one side. Like I just happened to make like really good friends out the gate that I still keep in touch with. And then, like to this day, like we're on a WhatsApp group.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I think the big piece. One thing that I really enjoyed was, so my father's family grew up in Syria, and his grandparents were in Syria, and my mother's family was in Yemen. So while Abu Dhabi was right in between, and that was the main motivation for going there, was so that we could be kind of closer to their parents. So we would just go back and forth between, to Syria and to Yemen at the time.
And did your parents just like change jobs when making this move, or were they?
Yeah, working? Yeah. So, my dad, he got a structural engineering job over there.
Okay.
It was actually like a company that was based in like the Bay Area and in Abu Dhabi. Mm-hmm. And then my mom, she got a job with the Department of Health over there.
Yeah. Are you an only child, or?
No, I've got 2 younger sisters.
Oh, so you guys, so that's a whole pack moving.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. So my sisters, especially my youngest sister, she's 9 years older than me, so she pretty much grew up in Abu Dhabi.
Yeah.
Whereas like I grew up in the Bay Area, so we kind of have like different upbringings in that sense. But people say we're exactly alike at the same time.
That's crazy. I feel like having a 9-year age gap is also like a very significant like difference, right? Like I just feel like every like couple of years it feels like there's a new generation now, just because of how fast like social media and like I don't know, all the content and everything. I just feel like the experience,
the cultural differences.
Yeah, it's like insane. Like I talked to my brother, he's 3 years younger than me, and we're like on the relatively similar opinions about a lot of stuff. And then my sister, we're like similar in personality type, but 7-year age gap. And I'm just like, I cannot imagine the experience of growing up as a high school student with like being able to see what all your the cool kids are doing, because I was the nerd. So I was just like I just feel like that is like such a unique change of society, the pace of that. Is that something that you found as well with like the relationship structures with your siblings?
Especially now, I think like the waves are way shorter from generation to generation. You know, like my sister the other day was like, "You look like you're in your 30s." I'm like, "What do you mean I look like in my 30s?"
Okay, first of all, I am.
But I'm like, "What do you?" Well, I feel like I got a little bit of a baby face. You know? Like, I was a little bit younger than.
I got sunscreen on.
I was like, I could pass for like 27, maybe 20. She's like, "No, you look." I'm like, "What do you mean?" She's like, "No, you wear like slim jeans." I'm like, "What do you mean?" Okay. Is that not cool? Like, what's going? She's like, no, everyone's wearing these like astronaut. I don't know, these like these astronaut pants. I'm like, yeah. And then she's like, we're going to TJ Maxx going to get you some astronaut pants. And
I
look ridiculous.
I worked at TJ Maxx for in all of high school, so
okay.
I'm a Maxinisto.
Okay, nice.
So I get it.
Yeah, that's my go-to.
Yeah.
Thank you for
hey man, doing God's work, baby. You know what's funny? The same playlist that they played in high school, they still play it today, pretty much. And like whatever song you listen, like if you go to TJ Maxx right now, and you're hearing the track, it is the exact same song, exact same timestamp that they're playing at a TJ Maxx in Dallas, Texas.
Really?
It's the same track
Everyone's
everywhere.
Just on the same wavelength.
Exact same timing and all. Yeah.
Why fix something if it's not broken?
Exactly. But it's like, I think it's Halo by Beyonce. Like, got that thing. Like, as soon as it comes in, it's like PTSD. It'll just trigger, and I'll start singing it with it.
That's so funny.
But yeah, Beyonce being. That's not a form of dicker at all, but that's like auto-tune immediately kicks in. Okay, so obviously you are traveling from one corner of the world, that being San Francisco, that being a tech hub at that time, at this point, because companies are just popping left and right there. And then you move to Abu Dhabi, which it's not the Abu Dhabi that we know today with Yas Island and NYU, like all that's going on there. What was it like to going from somewhere that is so, populated and exciting things happening, and you're more like in it, whereas like Abu Dhabi at that time, I think, is still building to what it's becoming. Did you feel, frustrated with your parents? Like, hey, why did we just move? I miss my boy Duncan. Like, I gotta make some websites. Like, what's happening?
What's cool is you can build websites anywhere.
Yeah, that's true.
But yeah, no, it was. Yeah, I think in the beginning I was definitely frustrated, and Abu Dhabi was Abu Dhabi was really a different place from what it is now. Like now it's expanded to all these kind of neighboring islands, and Yas Island, I think it was like the year I moved is when it like first officially opened, and all it had was
because these are like man-made islands.
Yeah,
it's like the Patrick meme. If we take it from here and put it over there, but it's with sand.
Exactly. Yeah. It's a complete. Yeah, it's just like constantly expanding into the Gulf. It's But it was still a really cool experience because it was smaller. Everyone like lived close to each other, so you kind of got a little bit more of, I'd say, a community feel versus like community almost like, even though it's a city, it's like a little bit of a village like feel versus now it's become a big city, or even like San Francisco, right? It's a big-ish city. It's still kind of small for a city, but it was I think it was really cool. I think I got really connected with my community and my culture. Like my Arabic, everyone still clowns me for my Arabic.
Yeah, same.
But I mean, you pronounce my name the best.
Do what I can, man. We're gonna clip that.
But I think I got much closer to people from my community, from the people that I grew up with. Like I grew up around, like my father's Palestinian, his family moved to Syria in 1948. My mother's half Yemeni, half Syrian. So I was really connected to those cultures, and I grew up around people that like of those backgrounds. Like my closest friends were from those areas. I had close friends as well from other parts of the MENA region, South Asia as well, East Asia. So it was a pretty diverse place, but I was really connected with the general. Abu Dhabi really is a hub for like the larger Muslim community in a lot of ways. So I got really connected to that. And I think the big driver was going into school and going into college was, at the time I was like, I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. I mean, I went into studying computer science because I was like, this is what I'm best at. But at the end of the day, like the underlying vision was I wanted to do something. I'm not trying to pat myself on the back here, but the idea was I wanted to do something that I think that was like giving back to a community that I felt gave me a lot. Because like you said, like when I moved to Abu Dhabi, it was going from like this, I knew, in San Francisco, I was just skateboarding, hanging out with like friends, it was just like very much like a Bay Area, Berkeley, like type, San Francisco type like lifestyle. And then moving to Abu Dhabi, brand new, and I was kind of welcomed with open arms. And I really got that feeling, and even going to Syria and visiting Yemen as well, as always like everyone had this kind of, just like, this really welcoming mindset. And it really gave me a lot in terms of who I am. So I was like, well, let me find some, I wanted, whatever it is that I do, I wanted to give back to those communities that gave me so much. So that was the underlying vision. And then going into college, that's when you saw a lot of, people, like everyone was building a startup. Everyone was trying to start something new. I went to school. So I went to school in 2010. That's when I graduated high school. And at that time, that's when, you first started hearing like these stories of these software engineers that all of a sudden were like billionaires that were doing that. And it's not that I wanted to be a billionaire, but it was more like, I could build something that could potentially be an engine to help a lot of people. So, and have some influence for our community.
So was the plan to come back to the US for college, or were you going to go somewhere in Europe? Because at this point you're quite the international mindset, right? Like Abu Dhabi did serve as like a hub for people from India or Europe or the US. Did you feel a pull to go back, come back stateside?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember what 17-year-old.
Yeah.
I think
you're in your 30s, man.
Yeah.
You are too.
I know. Hey, this is all about me, right? He's on the hot seat.
I think I was pretty much set on going back to California.
Okay.
Like at the end of the day, the Bay Area was still kind of like my home and what I knew.
Right.
And then, so I ended up moving back to the Bay Area, figuring out where I wanted to. So I moved back to the Bay Area, started off at community college, trying to, getting that California residency, paying like insane tuition, right? You have the, I think that, financial efficiency,
You have the 2 years
in the back
out.
of my mind, for growing up, with that always in mind. So I kind of did that, worked at Denny's.
Oh, wow.
While I was going to school, and then ended up transferring to UC Irvine and studying over there. So, going to school for computer science. And then at the time, UC Irvine had they were one of the first universities to like launch a college for computer science. Oh, wow. It's called like the Donald Bren School of Informatics and something. But they were the first ones to launch that school, and they had a bunch of different specialized focuses, and I was really into computer vision and AI, so I ended up studying transferring, majoring in computer science, and then did my specialized focus really in computer vision and AI over at UCI. So. And
did your family stay put in Abu Dhabi? Are they still there? Like,
so my family's still so my mom, so actually my dad moved back to the States recently.
Okay.
My mom's planning on moving back to the States soon, but she's in Abu Dhabi right now. And then my middle sister, she moved back to Abu Dhabi. So she also came.
Okay.
So she moved back to the States, went to UC Berkeley, and then moved back to Abu Dhabi to work over there. So
how was that move going? Obviously you moved there when you were 14, but moving back for university by yourself in a place that you haven't been back to for a while, and then of course like working at Denny's and like figuring all these things out because you're the oldest, right? So a lot of this is new on hard mode,
right?
It seems like. What was that like? Because you can't just call up mom and dad for help or food. You're kind of going in solo.
Yeah, it was. I think I've always. It was always exciting. I think that tends to be kind of my mindset. I think with those types of things, it's like, oh, this is like a new adventure. We'll kind of like navigate it and figure it out. And I did. It was like a little bit. I definitely had like a little bit of a safety net, right? It's like I wasn't
Yeah.
like 100% on my own. I was still back in like a community that like I grew up in, right? So there's always people I could call on and count on. So it wasn't too scary. I think I was 17 when I first moved out on my own, but I was kind of like, all right, yeah, let's do this. And then even then, I think the first place I went to, right, was like MSA, like the Muslim Students Association, right? And then somehow I ended up being secretary of the Muslim Students Association, even though I was still like, trying to figure my stuff out. But that was a community and built like a really good group of friends there and stuff. So it was, yeah, I don't know. I think with college, it wasn't too difficult at the time. I'd say probably what's more difficult, which I'm sure we'll get into, is kind of, I think, quitting your job and venturing out into like doing your own startup. That's when you're really, I think, going, that's when you're really
felt like nerve-wracking.
That's when you're on, really, really, I think, on your own.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a good experience.
Well, I have a question about your college experience. Yeah. Did you find that joining the Muslim organizations at that time, did you find value in that experience, like looking back?
Oh yeah, it was a lot of fun. Yeah. It was really cool to. I think I kind of had two experiences, right? So there's first when I went to community college, and then there was a different experience really when I transferred and went to UCI. So when I went to community college, I'd say initially that was really kind of like my exploration phase, like figuring out, kind of what I wanted to really focus on, what I wanted to do. Was making friends, building, again, like kind of starting from scratch all over again. Like I just started from scratch when I moved to Abu Dhabi and kind of doing that all over again there. And I think that's when it was like really, really helpful. And the community college I went to actually had there was a really large Muslim community. So, I mean, we would roll in like 30 to 50 people like each meeting. Which was pretty great, because sometimes when I transferred to UCI, I think it'd be the same, but sometimes you go and there's like 5-6 people at the meeting and you're like, what's going on here, so it was cool, and I got to make, I think, some of my closest friends, and actually my current co-founder, he was part of MSA as well.
Oh, that's awesome.
At community college, and then he transferred to Berkeley when I transferred to UCI, and then we got connected again when I moved back to San Francisco.
That's awesome. Now, was he in some type of a leadership position with you as well, or just
No,
you both were members of the MSA body?
I think Salman, actually, he might have been, I think, on the executive board before I joined, because he was a year older than me, so he was there for a year prior to me. So yeah, I think he might have been. But we weren't on the board at the same time. Got it. Yeah. Yeah. But even then, like as a kid, like the board positions are very,
Yeah. Of course. But I think those things.
I'm an entrepreneur. What do you do? Lemonade stand?
No, but I think some of those things are helpful at certain age.
For sure.
Gaps, right? Like it just depends, right? Like
sometimes you have to cosplay, to the role.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's some real work that you can do.
No, there is,
right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's nothing compared to like running a startup,
or
like actually doing like a real leadership position, right? There's like aspects of like, oh, this is still a student org. But I think it's interesting. Like, I think that it's so valuable to go to a place. It doesn't have to be like a Muslim organization, but anywhere like a place where you have like-minded people and individuals that you can just relate to. And in college, that's relatively easier to do. As you get older, you start to recognize that, hey, these third spaces are way more difficult to find, or communities are way more difficult to find. Now, we don't see that a lot in our Muslim community, because naturally we have like this concept of going to the masjid or going to like an event or something along those lines. But if you speak to like a lot of non-Muslims in our circles, like it's really difficult to like actually make true friendships. So that's like one of those things. So I think relating it back to like the college experience is like, okay, so you have a plethora of options of who you want to hang out with, but finding people who are of the same framework, an ethical perspective, is like a challenge. So I think some of those spaces are helpful.
Totally, absolutely. And then I think too is a little bit. I think there's a little bit of. I think the challenge that I also had was, so one, it was also a little bit of like, all right, this is my comfort zone, like going back to my community, right? Yeah. I think when I transferred to UCI, that's when I was like, okay, let me try to get involved with multiple communities, multiple groups, and then but still kind of have that like that Muslim community be a big part of it. I think that's another part of the growing experience as well, is like sometimes as you get older, it becomes more and more of a challenge, I think, to like find that community, especially as you like move move around, go to new cities, go to new places. But also at the same time, I think you don't want it to just be your core, safety net. You want to be able to kind of go out into the world and then figure out what you can, kind of like what you guys are doing right now, like going out into the world and figure out, well, what can we do to like bring back, bring what we've learned back to our community and try to help grow the overall, the
ecosystem for sure.
Yeah. So I mean, we're kind of seeing what I call like the seeding of ideas of what gets to where, right? You mentioned your mom, is an OBGYN physician. You end up you like computer vision, you like AI, you start learning those types of things. The toolbox of what ends up becoming what you're working on now is slowly happening. Now, co-founder, right? Your co-founder's name is Salman. Is that right?
Yeah.
So you oh, that's awesome. So you meet Salman. Did you know that you wanted to do a business with him like soon as you met him, or was it more down the line where you're like, oh, actually he would be a good co-founder? Like, what kind of led you to the process of choosing him, or both of y'all choosing each other on building this?
Yeah, I think so. Early on, we had conversations in college about potentially building something. We both had kind of similar mindsets. Both were interested in startups. He ended up he kind of he did a startup when he went to Berkeley as well, called Feeding Forward, which was like a Berkeley Skydeck startup. So like it came out of Berkeley Skydeck. So he was very much kind of in that mindset. When I was at UCI, I also had started my own my very first startup as well.
And what was that?
So it was essentially, it was called Nimble.
Nimble.
Yeah,
Okay.
and then what we developed was so people with like fine motor control impairment, so people with like have gone through strokes or people with Parkinson's, they have physical therapy exercises that they have to do. So this is when like really, kind of like the gyroscope was like a brand new thing, and like the phone and tablets and stuff. So what we did was like, hey, like let's take these physical therapy exercises that these patients have to do. So again, still like kind of like in that medical area, but let's take these physical therapy exercises that these patients have to do, and let's develop them into a phone app or a tablet app where you can kind of do the same kind of physical therapy exercises, but it's kind of guiding you through the process and then tracking your progress, tracking your movement. And then we tried to gamify it, so we'll make it fun, right? So we had one where it's like, there was like bees and you have to like hit the bees. Like, so it was, so yeah, it was a little bit of like a gaming app, but for this very specific medical use case. And that was a lot of fun. We got to team up with a few different physicians and physical therapists, but then everyone graduated and then got jobs, and we're like, we're not ready to we're not ready to take that leap yet into the startup world. So yeah.
I mean, that's pretty neat. What ended up happening with that? Because it seems like, I mean, healthcare is like your more or less your focus at this point. Was there ever any pressure back at home, like to be a doctor or anything like that, or were your parents pretty relaxed on whichever direction you went?
I think there was more. There was definitely, I think early on, my parents knew like this kid has very much has a engineering kind of mindset. I was like, math always came easy to me. Physics came easy to me. Like those types of like subjects I just excel. And then like the other subjects, I was I would always do it kind of, focus on what I was interested in. And so the subjects that I wasn't interested in, like bio, I always found fascinating. But it was, I'd say it was kind of in terms of like what my grades looked like. It was like, it was like math and physics A, bio, maybe I'd get like a B, and then everything else was just like, my parents like, come on, dude. It's like a C-, right? Like at every, and that was really kind of like all throughout, from like elementary through high school, right? So my parents definitely, kind of had this idea. It was like, this kid is really into kind of the engineering space. So they were, yeah, I mean, they definitely kind of, I don't want to say pushed me into computer science, but they were definitely very supportive.
They nurtured what you were naturally inclined to.
Exactly.
So Salman's doing his startup with Skydeck, and then you're doing Nimble. I'm guessing you guys are still chatting, right? Even though you guys are kind of different spaces. And so as you're coming in, was this like your junior year or senior year of college when all this was happening?
Nimble, I think we started it my junior year and then closed it out in senior year. Yeah.
And then at that point, were you thinking corporate, startup? Because you're kind of, again, you're in the heart of, the tech capital of the world. what are your options at this point?
Yeah, I think. Well, I guess one thing that was really cool, I guess, being from the Bay Area is like I had quite a few friends that had graduated already and were kind of working in that space. So yeah, I was open to probably like what I wanted. My goal at the end of the day was, okay, I still have a lot to learn. I wasn't ready to go start my own company yet, so I was like, I really want to kind of go through the process of taking a product and then taking it all the way through, from idea all the way to kind of like successful use case with like recurring users, and that was really kind of the end mission, and really understanding every step of that process, very, very thoroughly. So the goal was like to keep learning and to keep growing, but I always had it in the back of my mind, like, hey, like at some point when I'm ready, I'm gonna make the jump to starting my own company. And also, like, I didn't know exactly what type of company I wanted to build. I think the thing with Nimble was, it was an exciting project because it was like my first one, and it was also kind of, again, related to the medical space. So I was like, okay, this could potentially help people, but it wasn't something that I was like truly, truly passionate about, and something I was really eager to move forward with, which I think is ultimately why it ended, because that was the general, I think, feeling across the entire team. Also, we started it with like 8 co-founders. Like, it was just, we had no idea what we were doing. 8? Yeah, it was like a huge team.
The entire MSA board.
Were you fighting Mary Kay? Like, what's
we just had no. Like,
we all sell at the exact same time.
It was started off with like a recipe for disaster. We did one pitch to investors, and they were like, dude, like, this is not, like, your team dynamic is not right.
Yeah.
But it was but I think at the end of the day, yeah, my goal was like to grow, and like that was part of the learning experience, was initially, with Nimble. So later on, yeah, so essentially, yeah, so I wanted to go to San Francisco, go back to the Bay Area. Actually, so at that point, Salman had also graduated, and I went to go visit him.
Okay.
And kind of spend. So he was like living in San Francisco. He was working also at Oracle at that time.
Right.
So
Did you know Duncan?
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Actually, Duncan was still at Oracle, but no, they were in different. They were in different sectors.
Oh, that's so.
Fields.
Did you guys stay in touch with Duncan?
Yeah, I still have him on my phone as Amo Duncan.
I love these types of stories, man.
I have him on my phone as Amo Duncan, so it's like,
that's awesome.
Yeah, I still keep in touch with Duncan.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, where was I? So the so applying to jobs. Yeah, so I applied to startups, a few different corporate companies, and then the first interview I got was with the Irvine. So one of my friends, buddies, he worked in the IT department for like the Irvine like plumbing department. He was like, "Hey, you should like apply. They'll probably give you like a gig before you even like graduate." I'm like, "All right, cool." So I apply, and they're like, "Hey, like essentially you're gonna be making like business cards for all the engineers on the team." And I'm like, "Sure, whatever." Like I just wanted to line up job offers, right? I was like, this will be cool. Not hating on the Irvine Plumbing Company, but I got rejected, and I was like, "Oh my god, I'm never gonna get a job." I can't. I was like,
"This is post college."
This is like I'm still in my senior year.
Senior year, okay.
And then after that, I ended up getting, luckily, I ended up getting a job offer from IBM, and then a few other startups, and then I ended up taking the job with IBM.
Alhamdulillah. Okay, so I was also in the big blue of IBM.
Yep.
How did you feel about going to IBM? Were you like excited for this role? Because going from like the startup space to now probably one of the most, as corporate as you can get, which I think is IBM in my opinion. And that's not a good or bad thing, but it's just like definitely the pinnacle.
Yeah, they call them the suits of Silicon Valley.
Yeah, exactly. Right. What was that like? Were you like, dang, man, I'm selling my soul? Or like,
I think with any large corporation, I think it's super important to just look at the team in itself and look at the management for that team and see, okay, is this an environment where I'm gonna be able to grow and learn? And I had like one conversation with my manager at the time, his name's Chitta, who he was. I give him a lot of credit for like what I know now and what I was able to do, but it was one phone call. And then he was like, "Look, we're not going to pay as much as like the other startups," like giving me like the spiel why it's like $10K less than everyone else. But he was like, listen, like, I'm going to work you. And if you want to like learn, you want to grow, like, this is the team for you. If you just kind of, if that's not what you want, then go somewhere else.
It's a loaded question.
Yeah. That was kind of his spiel in the beginning. And I was into it. I was like, yes, like, this is what I want to do. I want to learn and grow. Like, I'm going to, essentially my goal at the end of the day was getting all of the skill sets that I needed to be able to start my own company. And shit, I knew that from day one. I walked in. So once I started at IBM, I went and worked for him. Like, went into the office. I went in with a suit, actually, and everyone was wearing shorts and like flip flops. And they were like, "Bro, are we getting fired today? What's going on?" So I walk in, and then so I ended up sitting with Chitta, and I was like, "Hey, my goal is to start my own company at some point, but I really want to learn all that stuff." And he was like, "I was like, just push me as much as you can." And he was like, "Yeah, let's do this." And it was a really cool environment, I think. So one of my really good friends, Rohan, who I went to school with at UCI, he was also working at IBM, so I got to be around him and made a few other people. And I met our other co-founder, Chaskin Saroff. Chaskin is our CTO, but he was like, we walked in and like, so there was a new kind of like cohort of engineers, and he was part of that, and he was easily the smartest one on the team, like just absolutely brilliant individual. And we ended up. Me and him, I'll tell that story in a little bit, but me and him actually ended up breaking off from this larger team of 60 people. We pitched an idea for a new product at IBM, and then we got the budget, we got a few more engineers on the team, and then we were able to go off and start that and launch that within the kind of IBM ecosystem.
Alhamdulillah, that's incredible. So you're pretty much starting your corporate career right around COVID at this point, right?
No. This is like 2015.
2015. Okay,
Yeah.
So when do you end up leaving IBM?
I left IBM around COVID.
Around COVID.
Shortly after COVID started.
And you mentioned you met two of your co-founders at IBM, or one?
No, one of my co-founders.
One of them.
Yeah, so Chaskin was, yeah.
When did those conversations start happening between like finding out that you've always been very transparent that you want to be, an entrepreneur yourself? Is that something you guys, connected with early on, or was that something later in your corporate career that you guys discovered?
No, so it was something, so I was very transparent, I think, to my boss at the time. But I wasn't like telling I wasn't walking around the office like, "Hey, pretty soon I'm out." Like,
Losers, bye.
Make the most of this right now.
I'm excited to make no money for a while.
Exactly. Yeah. No. So I was still very much like, even though, that was my long-term vision, I was still very much kind of dedicated to whatever projects I was working on. So Chaskin was a data engineer. His plan was to really go into like machine learning engineering. And he ended up leaving after 3 years at IBM, 2 to 3 years at IBM, to go work for a startup primarily focused on computer vision and AI as well.
And are y'all about the same age, or is he?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we're about the same age. I think he might be a little bit less than a year younger than me. Yeah.
The same timeline.
Yeah. So his plan was to kind of be more focused on AI engineering. We essentially, I think what happened with Chaskin is we got really, he was one of my favorite people to work with. He was very much like a very straight shooter. Like if anything was like technically like off, he would just like he could see it, he could explain it, and say, "Hey, we have to," and like prioritize, like, "Hey, we need to fix this." Right? He was very much just like an engineering. I mean, I'm sure you've worked with, or I'm sure you're a brilliant engineer yourself as well. But I'm sure you've worked with plenty of people that are just like, "Hey, like, what is this? Right? Like, this is how we need to do it." And he was the type of guy that like a year in, senior engineers with like 10 years experience would come to him to be like, "Hey, Chaskin, like, what do you think about this? I need some help." And he just had that brain, right?
Chaskin GBT.
Yeah, Chaskin GBT. Yeah, this is pre-chat GBT. Yeah, exactly. So we just, it was more of like, hey, like, we're really good at like building things together. And then when he left, I still remember he was like, "Hey, if you ever work on anything else in the future, like, let me know. I'd love to work with you on it." And then hence a couple of years later, gave him a phone call. It was like, "Hey, we're starting this company. We're building out, I know you're like a computer vision whiz now. We're building out a solution that can detect fetal anomalies in ultrasound." And he was on board.
So how when you're getting the idea to make the move, right? Because at this point, I think the first step is betting on yourself, and especially leaving a very comfortable corporate job, and then of course being the eldest, and then you also have your family's opinions. Like, how did you navigate that headspace before making the decision of putting your 2 weeks notice in?
Yeah. Well, yeah. So I think with with IBM, I think technically you're not allowed. There's like the
they're very strict.
The non-compete clause is like crazy, right? So it's like you're technically like
even while you're working, I think they're like you can't work on a startup, you can't do anything, you can't advise.
Oh, it's ridiculous.
For
the,
IBM specifically.
Yeah, the non-compete was like the exact wording was you can't work on anything. You can't work on anything that IBM's working on or may work on in the future.
Yeah.
So pretty much covers everything because IBM's literally has their hand in like every.
Yeah, because IBM invented AI, right?
Apparently with Watson, yeah.
Sorry.
Apparently.
And I'm talking to 2 big blue guys right here.
Well, I mean, but yeah. So they have the most amount of patents, like consistently for like the last 20, 30 years. But bro, you can I don't know.
They buy them out.
Dude, the amount of money you can make doing patents as an IBMer is insane.
Oh, the incentives are ridiculous.
You could just milk it.
That's literally everyone's got that on their mind at all times. Because I think it was something like it was at least 10K per
like,
patent.
I have a gum dispenser for my shoe. Yeah, you can.
And that because that's such
4K
a huge
right
business
there.
model for them.
Yeah, it's some IBMers like, dang it.
Yeah,
that's my non-compete's now going to be.
Yeah, it's wild. Yeah, the patent it's such a huge part of the IBM culture.
Yeah.
It's like how many patents do you have under your belt? And yeah, the financial incentives are ridiculous. It's
Yeah.
like, for every patent that you get through, I think you get 10K or 20K or something like that.
That's a fact. I think I had one of my
But they support you
mentors-
through the process of actually filing the patent and all
Oh,
that.
they've got a full
Every
legal
team.
team.
That's
Yeah.
an intense process.
One of my mentors at IBM, he had his base salary, but just from patents alone, he was making another like 150K a year.
So he was just throwing
Just spam, bro. Just spam. But like you can have up to like 4 people on that check, right?
Right.
So it's him and 3 others, and they all I think they all get the same amount relatively.
Right.
So like if you do it solo, you will make the same amount if you make it with 3 other people.
Right.
So it's just like join the bus.
But wait, I have a question. So what does that mean? He was producing 15 patents per year?
A lot, yeah.
Interesting. But like, is it just that you just apply for a patent or you have to be approved? Because doesn't it take like time?
Yeah,
Correct.
the patent process
So he's like seeding it. So what he's getting is like things he did a few years ago. So if you're just constantly
That's like-
on this,
that's his hack.
on this stream,
Got it.
you're cruising.
It's like once you're in it, it's
Yeah.
You just made it sound very easy to get patents.
It's actually not that easy too, though.
Yeah,
like,
I know,
there's
it's difficult.
I mean, if
Right.
anyone like wrote a paper that's like somewhat similar, you have to.
But IBM helps you fast track it a lot because they have the legal team, all the things that for a normal person is a headache or like a new, a little bit unknown. They're like, just give us what you have, and then we'll take care of the rest.
We'll figure it out.
Exactly.
Yeah, they have their own portal.
Yeah,
that you submit to their lawyers. And then
that's brilliant. Honestly,
Yeah.
it's brilliant. So okay, you're going back to the question of making the move out of corporate.
Yeah. So I started as a data engineer for like the first few years. Then moved into like solutions architecture. Was like, okay, like I think the one area that's lacking is like doing client facing work, and then doing solutions architecture. So essentially, it was like building out like AI and cloud solutions for IBM's like largest enterprise customers. So I'd actually go to Dallas a lot because American Airlines was one of their largest
Damn, we
enterprise
have the
customers.
same accounts, bro.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You had American Airlines.
I was a technical sales engineer.
Okay.
So I did everything consumer and travel.
Okay.
So I had United,
Oh, wow.
American, AmerisourceBergen. So I had farmers. I had both ends of the worst and best places of COVID. All airlines, awful market.
Right.
And then I had Neiman Marcus, which at that point was filed for bankruptcy. And then they transitioned me to pharmaceuticals. So then I was working with AmerisourceBergen and a bunch of other pharmaceutical companies. And so, yeah, man, we would have overlapped.
Totally.
Insane.
That's so funny. Their office was pretty cool.
It's incredible. You went to the new one, right?
Yeah. That was my favorite. It looks like an airplane.
Dude, it's
Yeah.
amazing. Especially when you look up, the entire
yeah.
thing's like a huge jet turbine. It's
Yeah.
so neat.
Yeah.
But their data team, their technical team at AA, they were still in the old office, so it's like really sad. But they've all transitioned now to the new building. But I think you have to be in office now. But I know a lot of American airline employees were very upset because it's like, oh, we just spent 1.5 billion dollars building this office, and now it's COVID, so no one's like in office, and now people are like loving working from home. And now they're like, actually don't want to go to the office. Even if it was, you should just give us like a profit sharing check.
After all that,
but yeah, it is a cool office though.
It's a cool space. So American Airlines it was funny. So my focus was like high security clients.
Okay.
So it was like banking and healthcare. American Airlines was just like kind of an offshoot. It was like, hey, we need some help here, and then I just got sent to go do some work with American Airlines. But primarily my clients were like Kaiser Permanente, BNPP, Bank of America, Geico. So those were like the main customers. But it was cool to really see, I think, the enterprise like adoption process, and also like the procurement process within these high security environments where you do have a lot of and the security with finance and with healthcare is there's so much overlap. So it was really cool to see, okay, like, well, how do you like deploy and implement like AI solutions, AI technologies within these high security environments where you have so many barriers to entry? And how do you streamline that process? And that was like the end goal for like my team specifically, was like, hey, we need to be able to just get through the process and figure out like what the roadmap is as quickly as possible. So that way we can like shorten. I was doing primarily like post-sales consulting, but like the way these like contracts would work is you get like a 2-year commit, and then the goal for like the post-sales consultant is like, hey, let's make sure that commit we actually reach the goals of that commit, so that way they continue to like subscribe to like these like services. So so they'd sign these contracts, and then you get to the procurement process, and you've got a whole other like layer of like security and bureaucracy to get through. So that's when I was like, so that was a really good learning lesson. As I was doing that though, that's when I was thinking about what I was going to be doing, what I was going to be working on next. And I think with Biotics AI, during that transition phase, it was about, so first we had, essentially what happened is, so the co-founding team was myself, Salman Khan, so our chief operating officer, Chaskin was our CTO, and then Dr. Hisham Al-Gamal, our chief medical officer. Dr. Hisham Al-Gamal is the director of fetal medicine at Alexandria University. He's based in Egypt. He also works with ISIOG in terms of implementing best practices and teaching best practices and in fetal ultrasound across Europe, the North Africa, East Africa, and Asia as well. So he actually just got back from a trip from China to teach best practices in prenatal ultrasound and prenatal diagnostics. And Dr. Hashem had just written an award-winning paper in how to use AI for differential diagnostics. So essentially being able to, he essentially improved on the current process for, like, if you see a bunch of different visual features within an ultrasound scan, essentially what that means is there could be a number of different types of fetal syndromes that could occur. And sometimes you have to bring in a geneticist to be able to figure out what that specific syndrome is. And he was able to build out a model that helps kind of put together a better prediction for, let's say it's like, hey, it's like there's a 60% chance that you have birenal agenesis for this specific, and within this specific fetal screening. So he had already started kind of that work, but he didn't do anything that was like computer vision based. All of that was very much focused on being able to like just input text and what you're actually seeing, and then trying to improve on like that predictive score that physicians currently. So there's other tools that just aren't as accurate. And he was trying to improve upon that. So I got connected through a friend of mine, Hamdi Al-Gamal, who he was working as an engineer over at Google at the time. Or no, at the time, no, he was working at UC Berkeley. Now he's a software engineer at Google. But yeah, he got me connected through him. I told him, like, listen, like, this, essentially, we got to talking. He knew a little bit about my background, my mother's work in obstetrics care, and we were able to. I told him, like, listen, I've always wanted to do something that could help people, help like our communities. And he was like, hey, you should have a conversation with my brother. He, he's interested in this space. He did a little bit of research in this space, and maybe you guys can put something together. So, got connected with Dr. Hisham. We kind of looked at, well, like, what are the biggest diagnostic issues that really impact maternal outcomes? And ultrasound is the main diagnostic tool of choice. There's also something called non-invasive prenatal testing for like genetic scans, but in terms of like 90% of fetal abnormalities, those abnormalities are screened for using ultrasound. So we looked at, well, how can we use, and with my background in computer vision and AI, Chaskin's background in computer vision and AI, we looked at, well, how can we use the, how can we take these ultrasound screenings and improve upon them with, some type of like new model or new type of technology, kind of going back to my brain space at the time. And the general idea was, well, let's see, like if we can build a base algorithm that can do some baseline kind of quality assurance and maybe baseline diagnostics, then from there we can see, we can actually make a decision as to whether or not this technology really is possible. So we built out kind of our first algorithm. It worked. It was about like 80% accurate, but it worked, and we were like, okay, I think we proved out the technology. We proved out that we can build something like this. Let's go from there. So, and then from there, that was really the journey to, well, now we have to get a much larger data set. We have to build out algorithms that are much more accurate. We have to clinically validate them. And then, kind of is more like the operational side of it and how we kind of piece all these different things together. But that was kind of the first thing, was like, how do we prove this out? And it really came into, well, let's do this kind of like smaller research project and see if this is possible.
And it sounds like you really like detailed analyze like what is the actual process steps, right, that are related to the source of the concerns or the pain point. Also, I think like something that you mentioned is like doing the genetic testing. I think that's something that not everyone does, and it's like an added cost. So like if you're trying to have a wider impact, then everyone ends up doing the ultrasound at some point, right? Even though it's at a later stage. How did you reach the conclusion that was where there's more, I guess, potential room for error there compared to everything else? The way I imagine that your process was like you basically put it on a board and you were like, hey, like here's every single step of the way of the journey of fraternal care. And then, how did you kind of zoom into identifying this was the main area?
So it's very, that's pretty accurate, right? It's like, well, like let's look at all the different type of, what are all the different diagnostic steps, and also like look at like what could potentially go wrong at each step. But then there's a huge piece of also like, let's talk to as many OBGYNs as we can. Let's talk to as many just mothers as we can, understand their experience, right? And let's talk to and then once we kind of got to the ultrasound phase, it was let's speak to as many sonographers as we can. But that was the first step, was we talked to as many OBGYNs as we could. And we essentially understood like what are their biggest pain points within their workflow, what are the biggest issues that they see diagnostically, and then what are the biggest mistakes that they see, right? And I think, the number of mistakes that we saw within the ultrasound space was astronomical, especially like OBGYNs that would tell us, hey, like I'll send a patient off for a screen. I hear this story all the time. I sent a patient off for like a screening, and essentially the medical imaging site came back with like the results. They said that, hey, we believe there's like a fetal anomaly like in the fetal brain. I remember the story very vividly. They get back the results. They'd only captured about half of the fetal anatomy. The image that they sent back that said, oh, this is a fetal anomaly in the fetal brain, was actually an abdomen capture, right? So it wasn't even the same part of. Wow. So like these types of stories really start to add up, and then you take that and then you look at like the existing research that was done, right? So the most comprehensive study that was conducted on this particular space was done by the EU. So this is really within like the developed world, and then what they found was that 50% of fetal malformations are misdiagnosed. So
50%.
50%. What does misdiagnosed mean?
So these are missed. Yeah. So these are missed.
So basically, we don't detect them in the time that we should have.
Exactly. Okay. Exactly. So. Exactly. False positives. There are a few other studies that really focused on false positives. There's some studies that show that false positive rates can be as high as 70%. These are like done at like some universities. But in terms of missed, and that also has its own downstream implications, right? Especially when we're talking about, there was that huge scandal with like that genetic testing. I forgot the name of the company, but essentially it was like genetic testing that went wrong, and they were essentially providing false positives for abnormalities that weren't there, and that led to like termination of pregnancies that didn't need to be terminated and so forth. So there's a lot of like definitely like psychological downstream negative impacts for the mother. But when we're looking at missed abnormalities, and you're looking at what are the types of interventions that can be done, there's a lot of areas that I'll talk about that in a second, but there's a lot of areas that could potentially be where you could really help the mother and potentially the baby, depending on the type of abnormality, if you catch those problems early enough. So we kind of took in, okay, like what are the downstream implications? We took a look at the data, and then we took really this survey that we did across about 50, I think, OB-GYNs to start off with. And then we spoke to pregnant mothers that had a misdiagnosis themselves. And actually, so, and you know, my mother herself, she also had, you know, she also suffered like a misdiagnosis like earlier on when she was pregnant, when she was younger. And then my co-founder Salman as well, he also had within his family negative experience with misdiagnosis. So like we weren't, you know, we were very familiar for how that can really impact like people that like we love and people that we knew. And so we also wanted to talk to those people as well. So we spoke to mothers that had been kind of through those types of encounters and in unfortunate situations. And then we were like, okay, this is definitely an area where not enough work is being done. There's a lot of room for improvement. And this is the team that has the expertise to be able to fix these problems.
I think one thing that's also interesting about this particular space is that, at least I feel in our communities, it's not talked about enough either, right? So did you find that to be a challenge? Because like, I mean, it's clear that like both your co-founders, right, have experiences in your own families, but maybe you would have never known that unless you did go down this path. So maybe that's an also area of like education and comfortability for the community to talk about these things openly as well. Is that something that you think is a challenge still?
Yeah, I think in general, I think there are cultural challenges around talking about issues within reproductive health. I'd say is your question more related to like when we're like learning about the problem? I think when we're learning about the problem, I think finding mothers that are open to talk about their experiences. I think in general, across not just necessarily like the Muslim community, but across like people in general, it's a sensitive topic. So I think as long as people know that you're coming to it with like kind of like a genuine perspective and with the perspective of, hey, like we're trying to improve these problems. We never, people were pretty willing to talk to us about what they went through. And then within the medical space, it's interesting, right? Within the medical space, amongst like physicians, like they're very open to talking about, because this is their world. This is like what they live for. They've dedicated their lives to solving these problems, right? So
okay, so it's great that you have like variety of demographic of information. Now it seems like you're kind of in a position where you have, you're working with research institutions, you're working with physicians. Obviously, it wasn't easy to just get there, right? Can you walk us back as to a little bit what kind of got your momentum going where your company was like, I'm sure there was a point where your company was not going to make it, right? Because going into anything healthcare is super gated and guarded with HIPAA laws and just apprehension from people who want to use your product. Can you share a time where you guys were about to crash out? Like, you're not going to make it.
Yeah, totally. So yeah, especially when in those gateways, right? And I think investors are very much aware of those gateways. So you really, when you're looking at like across the VC community, across the angel investor community, there's only really a handful that are really familiar with and like comfortable in investing within the medical device space. So your pool of investors is much smaller. And I think going in, we were a little bit naive, right? I think, we just heard all like the success stories. It's like, hey, we built a product, pitched it to investors, they gave us money. And I'd say like of all the areas that I really prepared for building a company, fundraising was one that was brand new to me. So going into, starting the company, it's like we got a little bit of angel investment, but a lot of it was, hey, like the founders kind of like pulled together their savings, put money in to like get things going. And then we were able to run a super like cost efficient process early on. Like our burn early on was like $3K to like $10K for like our first year, right? Just like getting things going. So it was like really, really low. And then we, once we got a certain amount of like technical traction, a good number of research partners, we saw exactly where things were going. We had a good vision for like the business roadmap. We were like, all right, let's go out. Like investors are just going to be begging us, begging us to take their checks.
They're always begging, right?
Yeah. We're just gonna be like, Papa. We're going to be shooing them away. It was like we had a very definitely, I think, naive approach. And I think, and this is, I think, if I were to talk to a founder right now, and tell them, maybe like first mistake number one was the people I asked for fundraising advice were very were very successful founders that I got connected to, right? Ones that are like already, you know, like either IPO'd or like raised their Series D or Series E. And I think I've either lost touch with what it's like, I think starting a company as a first-time founder and doing your first like pre-seed round, or they had an easier go at it because maybe they were able to, you know, they had some, you know, in terms of kind of like the Silicon Valley hierarchy, maybe they were able to kind of get in, get that money in sort of an easier way because of maybe they were like past, founding engineers or whatever it is with like a successful company. So the advice we got early on was like, hey, yeah, like once you, like, it sounds like you have all the pieces together, just go out and pitch. It's going to be fine. And then very quickly, that was not, you know, we kind of realized that was not the case. And also very quickly meeting more founders that were raising within the same space, we realized, okay, this isn't necessarily going to be a breeze. So we were really, to go back to your question, when did we, within that sort of first year, we were still building, we were still like dedicated to the mission, but it got to a point where like financially we were like really struggling, and we cut down our costs as minimal as possible, really trying to look for that like first big check.
And how big was your team at this point?
It was just the co-founders, and we had one engineer.
Okay.
It was just the co-founders and one engineer at this point. Yeah. So we were still, and so we were, the co-founders weren't paying themselves. We were all running off of the savings that we built up, from our previous corporate gigs. And at a certain point, the savings ran out. So it was, if we're going, I think June of 2023, right? We were at a point where, I know, like, so like our, essentially our savings had run out. Me and someone would work until 9 p.m. We were using, essentially we're putting like we were using our credit cards to pay for engineers just to keep the lights on.
Oh,
right?
My goodness.
And then, luckily and I was like just hounding for GCP for cloud credits. And, so luckily we had like cloud costs covered and our GPUs covered and all that kind of stuff. But we were at a stage where we'd work till 9, and then we would drive for DoorDash from like 9 to midnight to like make enough cash just to like kind of keep things like going from day to day. We were at a really struggling, we really were like, dude, we're like weeks away from like having to like either put a pause on this or we had no idea what we were going to do. And then we finally got our first check for $80K. And then we got the next check shortly after that for $120K. And that finally was like, all right, a little bit of breathing room. And then this was all like so this was end of June. We were probably at this point days away from having to put a pause. Like we were going to be forced to. Then in July, we got our next check. And then in September, we had applied to TechCrunch Disrupt, and we knew that we had made the top 200. So about 3,000 startups from all over the world apply. You guys know TechCrunch Disrupt from Silicon Valley. The show.
Yeah.
So,
well, I know them more than just the show, but yeah, definitely.
So it's like the world's largest startup competition. We had applied to TechCrunch Disrupt. We'd applied to TechCrunch Disrupt. We made top 200 out of about 3,000 startups. Then we made top 20, and then top 20 all compete on the stage where that infamous fight happens, and it's show.
No, but just to even go through that process, I mean, to be top 200 is like a major accomplishment out of 3,000. Like,
I was already like,
yeah,
this
right.
is awesome.
Alhamdulillah, that's awesome. And then you keep going, progressing, and then you get the ability to get on a stage of that platform for the top 20 is also massive, right? Because you're there, you're pitching your business, so you're giving visibility to the problem. You're establishing yourself as someone who is actually serious in this space enough to be going through this funnel, right? And then who's the audience? It's all previous founders and investors and VC, everyone. So that must have been like a major moment for you guys. How were you feeling? Like, were you nervous? Were you like, I'm gonna crush this? Like, you're confident? What was kind of that going through your head at this moment?
That's a good question, because so someone asked me this, like, what were you like going into it? It was a little bit of, I think it was laser focus, and I was excited. Which is weird. And I normally get really bad stage fright. Whenever I have to give a presentation, I'm like, oh my God, right? Like the butterflies are killing me. And I was nervous. I was like definitely had all those feelings, but more so I was excited because I had a little bit of this, I want to say a little bit of resentment toward like going up to this. I'm like, we're building this incredible thing that's going to help a lot of people, where there's like real potential. And then now it's like, okay, now we're on like the most public stage where we were pitching in front of, I mean, there was like, Kleiner Perkins was like one of like the, Mahmoud Hamid from Kleiner Perkins, Mar from like Pear VC, Marissa Meyer, former CEO of Yahoo. Like these are all like judges that were sitting on stage, and it's like, okay, now I get to actually present in front of the world with all these like incredibly well-known investors. And then it's like, it felt like an opportunity to really show, hey, like we're not a startup that should be ignored at this point. And it felt up until then, I definitely had that kind of like a little bit of resentment that we were ignored. So I was really excited to go up there and just kind of prove everyone wrong. And then the other companies that were there, now there was no guarantee to win because the top 20 companies were all incredible. Like people were building absolutely remarkable things. So I didn't have it necessarily in my head that I'm going in to win this. It was more like I'm going in to do a really good performance. And what's cool is like you for TechCrunch Disrupt, you have to show your product live, right? So that's part of the excitement. It's like, what if it doesn't,
awesome.
right? It's a bunch of startups. It's like things could break at any second. So we actually live streamed Dr. Hisham doing an ultrasound examination. Yeah, dude. Yeah, he was like on Zoom doing an ultrasound examination. The screening gets sent to our system. We process the screening and like we're showcasing the product like actually working. So there's also like there were so many different moving pieces, but through that process, the TechCrunch Disrupt team was phenomenal. People that were there were like really great. They really helped, I think, formulate our story as well, and this is the same story that I ended up using from that point forward. So yeah, it was working with them was really awesome, and then actually going out there and being able to actually showcase the tool live in front of everybody was great. And then it was one of those things where it's essentially you do your pitch plus demo, and that's 6 minutes, and then it's like 9 minutes of like Q&A. And my whole thing was like, I think the Q&A is gonna be fun. Like, and everyone was telling us like, you have to prep for the Q&A. You have to prep for the Q&A. I didn't prep for the Q&A at all. Because my mind was like, I'm the most critical person, I think, in the world of my own startup. So like, they're not going to ask me any questions that I haven't asked myself, right? And I'm going to be able to answer them. So it was like, but more so it was like, hey, I just need to make sure I get through the script. I need to be able to make sure that the demo actually hits the way that we need it to hit. And then, and then the Q&A is going to be fine. And then when the Q&A came, it was like, yeah, it felt like all the questions they were asking made sense. And I was like, yeah, this is how we're going to do it. Winning, I remember me and Chaskin were sitting down when they announced the winner, and then we kind of like we were both like betting on like who. So Chaskin, so you can only have one other co-founder on stage with you, and so Chaskin's kind of in the back like doing the demo while I'm talking. We're sitting down, and then when they announced the winner, we were like putting bets like, oh, we think like this. I think the name of the company, we both thought this company Magnastar was going to win.
Magnastar?
Yeah. They were a pretty cool company. I think they did something within like telecommunications, like simulations. I could be butchering it.
Yeah.
My memory could be totally off. But it was something within that space. But we thought their product was really cool. We're like, oh, we think they're going to win. And we're sitting there, and they announced Biotics AI. And we were, and I think Yahoo had just recently published before the like top 3 contenders to winning. We were like ranked like 3rd. At that point,
it's like a La La Land and Moon Oscar situation.
Yeah. Oh, it was when confetti fell down. It was unreal. And then to go from where we were in June, where we were like, oh my God, like what, like we're doing everything possible to keep the lights on, to okay, like we have a little bit of breathing room. Okay, now we just won the world's largest startup competition, and then from that point forward, it was. I'm not gonna say like fundraising is always, it's always
fun and easy, right?
Yeah, it's always fun. Yeah, it's always a challenge, but it definitely, it definitely helped, I think, a lot in terms of being able for us to get the resources to like finish out what we were able to do next, which was do our FDA clinical studies and then apply to the FDA. This past year, we were able to apply to the FDA and so forth. So
that's a huge accomplishment in terms of like to win the world's largest startup pitch competition, and I'm sure it brought you a lot of visibility and relationships that help progress the business. But how did you formalize those things? Like, what were the things that were happening post winning that really related to like growing your business? How did you like manage all of the different people that were probably wanting to talk to you and reach out to you? Because I would assume that going through this period where no one wants to really talk to you, you try and actively get into the doors of some of these places, and then that flip a switch happens, and then it's just like, okay, how do I manage all this potential funnel and where do I place people?
Yeah.
How did you like deal with that?
Yeah, I remember like the next day I went to a VC office and the secretary offered me like water and coffee.
I made it.
I'm like, what is going
About
on?
time.
They're like, yeah, like what is going on here? They're like VIP treatment, like you're sitting in this chair. And I'm like, meanwhile before I'm like, please can you give me like 2 minutes of your time. Yeah, it was like a ridiculous amount of outreach, right? So like once you win TechCrunch Disrupt, the amount of outreach that you get like the next day is ridiculous. Like it's just the inbox is flooded, and then it really becomes a matter of like just tailoring your focus to like the right funds, the right investors.
Like Bachmanity.
I'm sorry.
Like Bachmanity.
What's that?
Oh, it's
Silicon Valley.
it's from Silicon Valley. The
Oh,
Bachmanity
sorry.
VC
Okay.
group. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Bad joke.
Oh, after they won, and then they were like, yeah. Okay. Sorry, I watched Silicon Valley.
Sure you did, buddy.
I watched the first. I remember their attitude. Their attitude going into the investment meetings was like a big game changer.
So I have a question on this one though, and this will probably be my last one. Is that you're kind of going through like huge swings of emotion right now between I need to quit and find an actual job and hang this pursuit off, right? And then boom, you're like all the attention in the entire world, right? One of the benefits right now is that you do have a co-founder that's also Muslim, right? And so how did you guys lean on each other in terms of your faith during this like trial period and then also that post period, right? Because I think when you're going through these extreme emotions of failures right next door and then all the success, right? How did you keep yourself grounded in both of those extremes?
Yeah, I think it's easy to fall into like this, woe is me type attitude, as when things aren't going well as a founder. And it's also easy to kind of like get into, I'm like king of the hill when things are going well, right? As a founder, and I think you don't like at the end of the day, the best thing to do, I think, as a founder is to try to say is like even like you want to be able to, as difficult as it is, right? Like you want to be able to look at things as objectively as possible and stay even keel and just know like, hey, like these moments of failure or these moments of success are always temporary, right? And it's okay to like feel those emotions, but you got to kind of come back to a grounded space. I think that's where faith really helps, is that it keeps you back in that grounded space. It keeps you also focused on kind of the larger like vision, right? And of what you're trying to do, right? Like at the end of the day, our goal is to build something that's successful, but also build something that's going to help a lot of people, right? Inshallah. So I think that, so those are the things, right? It's easy to get kind of caught up in one or the other. And, you don't want the highs to get too high and the lows to get too low. And that's how you're able to, and understand that at the end of the day, it's like, I think the part of building, a huge part of building a company is also, you're kind of also working, you're really understanding yourself a lot better, right? I think one thing that I heard a VC partner once say at a panel discussion, and this really resonated. She said like building a startup is also a process of like building yourself. Like all of your flaws become very, very clear immediately because there's so much at stake for whatever like flaws you might have. And I think being able to like acknowledge those and work on yourself, like faith really plays a huge factor in that as well, right? So yeah, I think the big piece is like you want to actually have it at the end of the day that like you want to stay as grounded as possible, and if you can use faith to do that, then I think it's a really powerful way to do it.
No, I appreciate you sharing that reflection because I think it is important to find yourself to not to bring Eminem into this, but not to lose yourself
right.
in either moments, right? Where like you need to maintain faith on that things will get better and that you can also appreciate the highs, but when you're in those difficult periods, not to lose faith, right? And I think one of the big things is everything's a test, right? But challenges and blessings themselves are also a test, and how you react and how you maintain yourself, your character, those are all important times just to be aware. One thing that I'm finding really interesting is that your data sets that you're getting, were they all initially from like the MENA region and Europe and all those areas? Or because one of the challenges that a lot of medical studies, at least from my knowledge, is that they tend to be very, since majority of research are happening in the U.S. very early on in when we're like collecting data and things like that, a lot of the biases is geared towards the average American, right? So generally white centric. But it seems like a lot of your data is very diverse. It's kind of collecting it on everybody, which is beneficial for all groups of people. Was that something that you guys had a mindset on going into this?
Yeah. So in terms of, okay, so how do you build out a model that works for everyone? So we partnered with healthcare institutions in the Middle East, in the United States, and then more recently actually in Australia as well. And we did so that when you're building out these models, right, you have like your training and validation phase, and then you have your testing phase where you need unbiased data sets to prove out that especially if you're planning to sell within the United States, to prove out that your models work within the U.S. patient population. So I think there's a couple of things that are a little bit unique about that allow us to really train these types of models within the Middle East. Is on one side, you have, so when it comes to fetal ultrasound, you don't really see huge deviations across ethnicities until you really get to like the third trimester. And these types of problems that we're detecting are primarily focused within the second trimester. So, and now actually more so, it's being done earlier and earlier, especially when you're looking at the overturning of Roe v. Wade within the United States. There's more pressure to do these diagnostic exams at earlier gestational ages. So essentially what we're really looking at is like first and second trimester anatomy examinations.
Okay.
So because of that, we can actually build out these models that can be generalized to the public. What really happens is where you really need to focus on is like where is there standardized workflows across these different regions, right? Like is an ultrasound in San Francisco the same type of ultrasound that's being done in Cairo? And for that, there is within fetal ultrasound, there is an international organization called ISIOG that sets these standards and practices for how to do a standard fetal anatomy examination. And so the same ultrasound screening that you're doing in the United States should technically be done. It doesn't, but it should technically be done in a lot of other regions. So it's a matter of being able to find partners that kind of abide by those standards. So that way we can build out these types of models. And then within the United States, what we were able to do is we partnered with multiple health systems to gain additional clinical data so that we could validate those models and prove that the models work on the patient population within the United States. And it's been a really successful kind of process. And then within that, writing research paper publications, connecting these physicians that are in Egypt with physicians here in the United States. And then, we're actively continuously growing this, right? So we're started with fetal anatomy examinations, but we're scaling across different obstetrics use cases, moving into gynecology use cases. And in that process, continuing kind of to replicate that model that we kind of on the fly kind of built as we were kind of growing the company, where, okay, let's find some institutions, find some lead physicians within Egypt. Let's find some institutions within the United States, connect those physicians together, and then build out that process of let's securely train these models. So everything that we do within the Middle East, we follow the exact same protocols that you would have to follow within the United States. So build everything out, build out the infrastructure. This is where I think my experience at IBM really came in handy, is building out this kind of secure infrastructure for training models. So building out that infrastructure, training these models, and then clinically testing them within the U.S. patient population.
That's incredible. I mean, in terms of like the future, right? Like obviously you guys are very focused on this, but I feel like there's two questions. One is accessibility to these types of tools, right? So is there a roadmap to having these types of solutions, maybe in a different format or structure where places in developing nations are able to take advantage of? Because I assume you don't really need to have as much of a human in the loop to get some sort of feedback as you did previously before things like bioethics AI existing. Is that something you guys are planning for, or is that not possible?
Yeah, that's a huge focus of ours, right? So so whatever problems that you see in the United States so kind of going back to the core issues, right? So 50% within the developed world, 50% of pregnant patients are misdiagnosed. Yeah. The leading reason is because of poor quality scans. So what I spoke about before is that you have these, you'll have a scan where there are essentially 20 standard two-dimensional views of the fetal anatomy that need to be captured. Within each one of those views, there are key structures and regions that need to be captured. If anything's missed, and there's an abnormality within that particular region, then the patient becomes vulnerable. So essentially, what in the United States, it's estimated that roughly a third of patients get incomplete scans, and that's the leading reason for misdiagnosis here in the United States. So, sorry, my phone's ringing. All right. So take that problem and then apply it to a developing nation that has less qualified resources, less qualified sonographers, less qualified OBGYNs, less facility, less high quality ultrasound machines, and the problem is going to be way, way worse, right? So that was a huge motivating factor for us. It's like, well, we can work, how can we work within these ecosystems, especially from like nations that we're from, right? So Salman's like huge vision as well was to be able to deploy this within Pakistan, where we can actually deploy our software, deploy our solution within hospitals where they can actually benefit, right? While at the same time also working with them to actually develop research, right? And then tackle markets where we can actually really justify like the venture scale of the company and the product, right? So if we can justify the venture scale of the product, we can gain investment to be able to do the work that we're doing. We can work with these healthcare partners and really focus on hospitals and health centers where maybe they have a lack of resources, but they have the qualifications to be able to capture these types of ultrasound screenings to a degree that allows us to train these machine learning models. And then we can work with them to build out these products that benefit them as well financially, right? So these hospitals can actually grow financially from the collaborative work that we're doing with them. And at the same time, we can deploy our solutions back into their hospitals so they can actually grow as in terms of the quality of care that they have. And if you do that and you actually do that at scale, you could actually really transform. I mean, because at the end of the day, when you're looking at these medical imaging centers, especially in developing nations, you really have like within every city, you really have like one major hub. And if you can transform all those major hubs through this kind of collaborative work with a company like ours, where you can actually, they can participate in the research, they can and they can leverage the solution, you're improving the quality of care, and you're improving them like financially, improving the overall revenue stream for these hospitals. They can actually spend more money on more qualified training, more equipment, and so forth. Right, and you could really change healthcare, I think, within these regions. And I think that's a model that we really want to see other Muslim founders really adopt.
No, I mean, it's definitely very impactful work, right? So I have a daughter, and inshallah, we're about to have another kid soon. So going through that process is, let's put it this way. I want the most information that I can get logically so that I can assess at every stage, like as a family. So having some misdiagnosis along the way or incomplete scans, like these are things that I think they're solvable issues. And if that's like a Western centric view, right, where there are all these intense access to resources, I can't imagine how it is in some of these other regions, honestly. I think the work that you're doing is super impactful and it's super important. And as a member of society, like you want to you want to receive the best care that you can, especially about something such an important miracle in life. So I think the work that you're doing is like super incredible, and anything that we can do to support, we're definitely going to do that, inshallah.
Inshallah.
So how, for reasons for obvious reasons, how do people get to work with you? How can they use Biotics AI? Like where's the sign up sheet?
Right. Yeah. Well, you can go to our website and you can contact us directly through our website, or I guess you can post my email on the YouTube upload, right? So it's just my first name, Robhy, or Robhy with an H at biotics.ai, and yeah, they can reach out to us directly. And we're always looking for clinical partners for adoption, for research, and then also just looking to hear people's experiences as well. If someone wants to just reach out and tell us about their own experience, and we can see how we can potentially help them. So.
Well, Robhy Bastami, founder of Biotics AI, thank you so much for joining us today here at the Caravan Podcast for our New York series. It was a pleasure having you. Jazakallah khairan.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you guys having me as well.